Hi, this is Neo Minia, and today I'm going to be talking about my new collection called Fragility of Values. As you can tell, it is connected with the war in Ukraine, and I just wanted to play my small part and earn some money by selling those artworks and donate some of those money. I don't know, maybe you think it's silly, but I wanted to do something, and this is what I came up with. So, it's up to you to think that I'm stupid or anything like that. It's up to you to think that's a great idea. So those are the actual photos that I've taken. I took them back in 2013. Some of them are back from 2011. Um, Mostly 2013. That's Kiev, and I wanted to present Kiev as a beautiful and sunny and peaceful place. Um, and I also wanted to add something to it, and I decided to place those um, common human values and virtues um, upon those images in three languages. So you can tell the difference, but that it's English, obviously, Ukrainian, and Russian. I wanted to share some techniques I've used to create this. So let's start with the photos themselves. I took quite a lot of photos, but I ran into an issue because it happened so long ago, and well, things changed a lot. Let's take this photo, for instance. It's a great image, and this girl, I think she kind of symbolizes what people consider Ukraine these days, like fragile, at the same time really strong. So this is a cool image, but this, that's a hammer and sickle, and these days this symbol is considered deeply inappropriate in Ukraine because of decommunization thing. Well, is she communist or something? What's wrong with her? Well, of course not. She's just cosplaying a very famous motherland monument, which still stands in Kiev to this day and still bears the same symbol on the shield. But I still cannot use it, so I had to be quite careful of what I'm picking. The other problem was that I'm fond of taking pictures that are less than, that show something less than perfect. Like, look at this. But this is kind of communicating a wrong idea, as if Kiev is some kind of dirty, dilapidated city, or this one. So I had to, again, be really picky of what I'm doing. This is definitely not an image that can be used. So here I am working in Lightroom, and here are some of the photos I've picked for the project. And the ones I will be using are flagged, so we can just, kind of train on this image. I'll be showing the techniques I'm normally using. Let's reset all. Actually, you can select just all the photos for the next steps I'm going to be showing, but here I will be selecting only one so that I don't reset anything else. So just click Auto in library mode, and it instantly makes it slightly better. I like to crush the highlights so that I get more details. You can tell that those building details are now more revealed. Contrast is always good. A bit of shadow lifting is always all right. Clarity, maybe not. Vibrance, yeah, probably. So this is those are just basic corrections. So then we go to develop, and the first thing we need to do is to fix the technical issues, which is first done by enabling profile corrections and removing chromatic aberrations. You can definitely tell chromatic aberrations are bad here. So yeah, I like the highlights crushed all the way to the left, though sometimes I would not do that in such an extreme way, but it's really a contrast image, so I do want to have details both in shadows and highlights. Contrast is just fine. The funny thing is that highlights and shadows are kind of separate from contrast, so you can actually raise contrast while crushing highlights and lifting shadows, which is really cool. I mean, Lightroom is amazing sometimes. So this is all right. I'll probably raise texture because I like that tree much, and vibrance is probably slightly too extreme. Clarity, maybe. So it's really subtle, but the image does communicate what I want. It looks peaceful. It looks sunny. It looks really cozy. So that's great. The next thing we need to fix is the geometry. The rule of thumb is verticals should be vertical. You can see that the image kind of collapses towards its middle, and it's not how we perceive the world. We always know that vertical parts are vertical. That kind of thing, most of the times, like 90% of the times, looks really amateurish. Sometimes you want this for like a special effect, like here, where the walls are kind of closing in, and that's kind of the intent. We'll just use this upright tool, and just like this, we are creating one vertical. And then I think those windows are a good candidate for the second vertical. Did it work? Probably did. And there you have it. Also, you may want to click the constraint crop, just crop in. The next thing I'm always doing is the color correction from those panes. Blue is really cool. Like, you pull blue down and instantly your sky just pops. And here it's already kind of bluish, so I don't want to go too extreme. And you can see that it's overly saturated now, so I just bring the saturation for blues down slightly. But it's still better, still looking good. You also normally want to just pull the neighboring colors slightly so that you avoid halos. We kind of perceive plants as being almost emerald, so pulling greens towards emeralds and yellows towards greens kind of creates that effect. You can see the difference. Normally reds are not that present in real life, in like nature, in cityscapes, so I like to turn the saturation of reds down a little bit. Oranges need to go up though. And there you have it. Like, it's a sunny day, right? I'm also playing quite often with color grading, shadows towards blues and highlights towards yellows. Quick and dirty way to make everything kind of sunny. So stuff like this. You still have to experiment, obviously, but those are the techniques I'm normally using, and I like them. So I decided to show them. Now the next part is the wording. I need those actual words somehow. And I decided to make them as a 3D sort of stuff, like as if it's some sort of glass, kind of scratched with some sort of distortion going on. But most importantly, those words that are sort of engraved into this glass. So glass can be really strong, but glass can be really fragile. So this is the metaphor I was going for. Once you engrave something, it cannot be erased. Like, you cannot view the image through this glass without seeing those words. So this is the idea behind that whole thing, but I needed a good way of creating those text blocks, and I needed a good way to change them because I wanted to make many versions of that artwork. So I turned to After Effects, actually, which is a weird choice, granted, but it turned out really well. So After Effects can animate almost anything. And most importantly, it can animate text. So I can have that text field here, and those keyframes are the actual text changing. I also animated scale because those words are really long, and sometimes position, so that kind of stuff. So I have this composition where each frame is a different set of words. the other composition I have is the actual composition that generates maps for 3D software. In this case, that's Blender. I couldn't be bothered to create two comps. I probably should have one for roughness, one for displacement. If you don't know why would you need roughness and displacement maps, that's okay. Then you are probably not working in 3D software. And then I just render those out as PNGs. So let's go to Blender actually. First of all, I think we should go to just that kind of view, the plain 3D view, just to see what's going on. There's a camera here, obviously. There's a plane with the image. There's an add-on, I think, for Blender, which is called Images as Planes, that can literally import images as planes. And then there's this glass thing. That's the setup. It's really simple. There are two lights, area lights. As for the image, that's the material. Normally, you would just, go for the emission shader so that you just get the image without any, light tricks that Blender uses. You just need the image itself, and that's why it needs to emit its own light. But I also wanted it to catch light. I also plugged base color, and I left roughness at the default value of 0.5, so it catches light. The glass block is, of course, by far the most complex thing here. It actually has two textures. So there's glass and glass front. Well, glass is a simpler one, so I won't be covering it. It doesn't make sense. I just wanted it to be less wavy, less distorted, less kind of getting in the way. And I wanted to, for all the fun stuff to actually happen on the front side of this glass. So it looks daunting, really, but it is at the same time pretty simple. So there's a simple glass shader, and it has roughness and normal plugged into it. So each normal, well, not normal, it defines fake geometry, so to speak. The last one is probably the simplest. It creates the engravings. So it's pretty simple. That's the map that was generated in After Effects. This map actually consists of two layers. This is the layer that creates that kind of depth thing, so that it actually looks like an engraving. So it consists of matte choker, which brings the edges inward, and and also a Gaussian blur that makes it, well, blurred. There's also a mask on top of it, so that it doesn't bleed outside of the letters. For it to be kind of distinct from the rest of the surface, there's also a really pale gray layer underneath, so that I have well-defined borders of the letters. I'll quickly show roughness as well. It's actually simpler. It's also a masked out, blurred image. So I think it only has Gaussian blur and nothing else. It's pretty simple. So the other thing that I wanted some scratches, and I won't go into creating those scratches right now because it's an involved process. I'll leave a link to a tutorial I followed to create this. It's really cool, really simple. So those scratches catch light. So the whole kind of idea of that engraving and scratches catching light and stuff like that comes from, those LED things that you see in cafes where you get a chalk marker, just write something on it, and it looks like it's transparent apart from the parts that you write in your chalk marker. This is the idea. Now the next layer of bumpiness is this wavy thing. Now I wanted the center of the image to be more well defined and the edges to be more wavy and distorted. And the way I did this was that I created this really simple image in Photoshop, and I used it as a mask. You can see that there are some ribbed glass effects. Can you see it? As if I'm using a wave texture or something. And this is some kind of artifact, which I like. That's not something I created like consciously. I think the reason for this is some sort of weirdness going on with that texture, maybe because it's 8-bit, it just doesn't have enough data and it creates those weird artifacts, but I like it. I kept it. The question is, how exactly do you create those waves and stuff like that? Well, again, that's quite an involved topic, but honestly, it is pretty simple. You always combine some sort of noise textures like this, or like this, or like that, in all sorts of weird ways, weird and creative waves. Sorry. I'm also using mapping nodes so that I can, you know, push those textures in space so that they look different for each artwork, so that they don't repeat, stuff like that. Now, roughness. As you can see, there are two things going on here. We have our map that I have been showing in After Effects, and also we have those smudges. So I wanted to have some smudges as if somebody has been touching that glass with their dirty, sticky fingers. So again, those are just two textures combined, passed through Color so that we take only the data we want and then plugged into roughness mixed with the map. Also, one of the bump nodes actually has some really faint smudges as well, so that those smudges catch light a tiny bit. They make the surface imperfect, just like scratches, which is what happens in real life, that those oils will actually have some volume, right? It's always like this with, 3D stuff. Your geometry may be really simple, but you still have to create a complex material, otherwise it just looks bad or fake or both. I wanted it to be interesting, so I created this node setup, which again looks daunting, but it's really simple once you break it into simple parts. Each of that node just branches off to those noise textures. That is pretty simple. The lights, I covered them like briefly. Those are area lights, not really powerful, and each of them kind of has the color of the Ukrainian flag. I mean, here it's only yellowish orange because I didn't want to ruin the color scheme, and then again, yellow is a part of the Ukrainian flag. You can tell that's kind of bluish, that's kind of yellowish. So I'm playing with those colors, obviously. So I wanted each image to look slightly different. So I again played with settings for the wave texture so that they are all different all the time, like scratches are different. I placed lights in different ways. I changed the colors slightly. So all those tweaks are really important. Otherwise, it's just lazy and stupid and it just looks repetitive. So this is it. The funny thing is that while rendering it, I used only 80 samples, which is really low. I mean, it's lower than my viewport setting, and it worked just fine. You can see that there is some noise, but it's so minor and it almost looks like grain. It almost fits the grain of the photo itself. So I'm pretty cool with this. Actually, I like it. I also kept those distorted reflections of light. I like my images imperfect. I'm going to be actually redoing some of this because I've consulted a Ukrainian friend and they told me I got some words wrong. Well, I'm not a native speaker. Sorry about that. And I'm going to be doing more. I think it will be like up to 15 works. Oh, I just hope they sell and I can help somewhat. Thank you for watching, and I hope that, next time I'll be covering something much more peaceful, because this just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that I even have to do things like that. But I still will. Thank you for watching this. This was Neomedia. Stay safe.